Hello, I'm Liz Reynolds, Marketing Director at Capital Advantage. I'm here this morning with one of our financial advisors, Jeff Giguere, who is going to be talking about his recent article about legacy planning. Good morning, Jeff.
Morning, Liz. Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
So, Jeff, what is legacy planning and why is it important?
Good question, Liz. Legacy planning is very similar to estate planning. They're almost synonyms of one another, and most people are likely familiar with estate planning and in the process that involves. Estate planning, I like to think of as kind of building your blueprint. It's your trust or your will. It's the documents that you put forward to execute a plan when you eventually pass away. Legacy planning, I think, takes it one step further, and you have your plan in place, but you prepare your beneficiaries, your successor trustees, your executors for your eventual passing so that they're prepared when you do pass away. And I think that is a crucial step in making sure that your wishes and wants are carried out.
So, Jeff, what's the best way to get started?
I think a good place to start, if you haven't already done so, is ask yourself some very basic questions. And you can refer to my actual blog article. There's a longer list. You can use various website articles. But some of these questions could be, who do I want to leave my property, my assets to? Who would I want to make decisions on my behalf if I can no longer make them for myself? Do I want any of my inheritance to go to a charity? Do I want the inheritance to be used for a specific goal, tuition, down payment on a house? Things along those lines where you're opening up kind of the dialogue inside of your mind and kind of framing what you would like to happen. And running through those hypothetical situations, I think, makes the conversations easier in the future. So say you are planning on potentially making only one of your children, if you have multiple children, the successor trustee of your trust when you pass away. Well, have you thought about what the other child is going to think about that decision and what the potential repercussions of a decision like that may or may not be? So just running through those hypotheticals and various situations and kind of getting yourself accustomed to those questions that an estate planning attorney is likely going to ask you will make that process a little bit easier.
So I can totally see the importance of thinking about these questions, but how do I, once I've thought about them, make sure that my wishes are carried out?
Great question. So if you've got kind of the groundwork laid out in your mind and you know what next steps kind of look like, I think this is the point where you actually need to consult with a professional estate planning attorney to develop and create a comprehensive estate plan. So this would include a trust, a will, power of attorneys, healthcare directives, all of those important documents, and consulting with multiple professional estate planning attorneys in your area, I think will provide obviously a more diverse range of recommendations. And although there may be some overlap, I think you're going to see that some may have different recommendations based on how the conversation goes. And having multiple options to choose from in a very important kind of plan like this will make the decision hopefully easier for you.
Great. So after I've chosen a estate planning attorney and I put together a comprehensive plan with them, what's next after that?
So this is where I think the legacy planning aspect of it really kicks in, where you will have kind of that talk where you have your estate plan more or less executed at this point. So your wishes have been essentially written down on paper and they're legal, but your beneficiaries may or may not know that they're even in your trust or listed as a beneficiary. So having that conversation with them, whether it be your children or a third party fiduciary or an executor, whoever it may be, kind of getting everyone on the same page and letting them know kind of the decisions that you've made and why you made those decisions. Say, if we go back to my previous example of listing only one of the children as a successor trustee of your trust, this gives you the opportunity to kind of explain the rationale behind that decision making, and it opens up a dialogue for questions to be answered, whether they're questions coming from you or, in this case, likely the beneficiaries. And it just allows everyone to get on the same page. And I think there's a big difference between kind of asking yourself, how much do I want someone to inherit versus is that decision, or are those people prepared for that inheritance? And I think the second question is more important. So getting everyone on the same page, and that may involve the estate planning attorney, it may involve your CPA or your financial advisor, where you have a conference call with those professionals and your beneficiaries or executors, third-party fiduciaries, successor trustees, and you open up that dialogue so that everyone is prepared.
Sounds like a really important step, and that not everybody thinks about that step.
Exactly.
So afterwards, I assume, because depending on when you write this, because people change and life changes, that these plans aren't set in stone.
That's a good assumption. So the plans don't necessarily need, well, so they are set in stone when the documents are executed, which is why we would recommend kind of revisiting and potentially amending the language within all these documents at least once every 10 years. Like you said, life changes, people change. There's, I mean, 10 years is a long time. You may have written someone into your trust back in 2011, and maybe you've fallen out of touch with that person, but they're still listed in the trust, or they're still listed as a beneficiary. And if you were to pass away today, that person is technically entitled to their fair share because they're still into the trust. So going back and just looking through the language and making sure it's all still in line with your original expectations and wishes is very, very crucial. And obviously, if you do that and updates need to be made, communicating those updates to all of the interested parties, your beneficiaries, is also a crucial step so that everyone, again, is on the same page. So
sounds great. Great information, Jeff. So Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, Liz, I'll wrap up. I think really legacy planning or estate planning, whatever you want to call it, it can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be. I think simple is probably not even a good word to use, because death and inheritance and account consolidations and all of that stuff isn't necessarily simple. It's not as easy as saying, writing someone a check and there's your inheritance and have a nice day. It is more complicated than that. But it can be relatively simple in the grand scheme of things if you want it to be. So I think just, again, making sure everyone is on the same page and making sure that you've thoroughly kind of described what your wishes are for someone who may be a direct beneficiary of your estate will allow you to sleep better at night and kind of make sure that you have your legacy is carried on in a way that makes you happy. So, and I think that's important.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for joining me today and sharing this. And I can see how putting a legacy plan together can bring peace of mind. And for those of you who'd like more information about financial planning subjects, be sure and visit our website. Thank you.